Okay, and we're live with another episode of The Focal Thought, and my guest today is Dory Shirazi. How are you, Dory? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good,
Thanks for
thanks.
having me here.
No, this is awesome. This is so much fun. We haven't connected in years, so I was just
Mm,
asking you before we hit record. You got into yoga, which is what this podcast is about, and yoga is a fascinating subject for me. I haven't researched it a whole lot, as much as I should have. I do some very, very basic yoga, but nothing to speak
yeah.
of. My knowledge of yoga comes from, reading some of the Hindu scriptures. And, I do want
Mm-hmm.
to say that the yoga that you have in the East is very different from the yoga that we have in the West, right?
100%. Yeah.
So I was wondering if maybe if we can start off, if you can, let us know what is the difference between the yoga in the East versus the West that we get here?
Uh, well, the East has a much more, first of all, this is very, very ancient art of, meditation and movement. And the reason yoga became what it was, the movement meditation, was that people wanted to be okay sitting in a meditation. So they wanted their body to be prepared for a seated meditation. So they wanted their body to have the strength to be able to do that. So they created movements synchronized with breath. So, and that became the movement meditation. And then maybe some of your listeners know that most of I guess all of the yoga classes that I've taught and all of the yoga classes that I've been in, they end in either Shavasana, which is lying down without movement, and it's a form of a meditation, or you end up in a seated meditation. And the goal of the whole practice was to be able to stay still at that end practice. So that practice has been, because it brought so much wisdom. It has so much wisdom in itself. Like, you learn about yourself, that it became so popular. And it's surprising that in India, back, I don't know, maybe thousands of years ago, this art was not practiced by women.
Oh,
It was
really?
only, it was privileged. Yeah, it was a privileged art only for men. And now if you go to, well, before COVID, if you go to a yoga studio, it's all women. And
Correct.
right, it's yeah, it has evolved, it has changed, it has taken sometimes out of context from its ancient philosophy and wisdom to a form of a workout. But it's much more than that. And like in if we want to again compare it to like the Eastern fella, where it came from, its roots, that movement part is just one limb of yoga. Yoga means liberation and freedom. And the movement part is like one limb out of the 7 limbs of yoga. So, and then there's like samadhi. There's like different limbs that goes with like freedom of like going towards what's the word I'm looking for, liberation of thought or equilibrium of thought, going towards that. So the movement is one limb, and the Western society basically just took this limb and and separated it and just used it up, and it became popular as a workout. But even in the practices here, in the trainings here, they do still teach you those limbs of yoga. They still do teach the philosophy. They don't get too deep. but they still mention it. But you know, it's even the name, the Sanskrit language is ancient, and it's not being used nowadays. If you take a yoga class, like a mountain pose, it's called a mountain pose. It's not called Tadasana, you know. So yeah, it's but the thing is, I'm just happy that it has come, and the people in the world are using this ancient art to better themselves, to strengthen their body, to strengthen their mind, and to synchronize their breath, because the breath is that bridge to their consciousness, right?
Correct. Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, because it's, you know, I sort of think it's similar to Qigong, because I do a lot of Qigong. And with Qigong,
Yeah.
a lot of the instructors say that even if you don't know the science behind it, as long as you do the movements, you know, that's a good thing. So with yoga, even though they don't know, you know, the other limbs, and they're just sort of doing the workouts, that's a good starting point. It's an icebreaker.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
It's healthy. And then if you are interested, then you can research and get into more of the philosophy and the history behind it, right?
Well, that's how I started. I was like, okay, I'm pretty much an athlete. Like in back in university, I was like, I'm an athlete. What is this new thing called yoga? Let's try it out. I went to the yoga studio, and I like set up right by the mirror, right at the front. I'm like, my body's strong. I used to be a gymnast. I could do all these things. And then I got my butt kicked. And then after that, I practiced for like 6-7 years before I was like, I went for the teacher training and learn more about it. So at first it was like a physical thing, and then it just grew. You know, one thing led to another, and I learned more and more and more. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And what sort of yoga did you study specifically?
So at first, the very first one, first training that I did was a Hatha training with Moksha Yoga International. However, their name has changed to Modo International now. They're a pretty big school. It's a hot yoga, which again, the hot yoga is more westernized type of yoga. They don't have that back in India. If it's hot, they don't practice yoga because it's not really that great for your body. But it got popularized here in the West. So that was my first training. It was like a 500-hour training. And then after that, I did Vinyasa Flow, which is much more, it's much more strong, like it's stronger, it's more strenuous. So it requires experience to do the yoga flow. Your body needs to be a lot stronger. And then I did Yin training, which is more slower, much slower stretches. And then I did, I did functional training, functional movement training. And the functional movement, they taught an aspect of yoga, but it was more movement of the oh my God, because I speak 2 languages, sometimes trying to the words, I forget the words. So yeah, functional training, it has to do with your joints and just the health of the joints more so. And it doesn't do fancy things you see on Instagram, but it works on the muscles and the range of the motion, normal functional range of the motion of the bones and the muscles and the joints.
Got it. So it's very varied what you've studied, because you're getting into sort of stretching the body, and then, strength conditioning the body, and getting inside, right, with the joints and the muscle tissues.
So a regular yoga teacher has basically 200 hours of yoga teacher training, and you become a teacher. my training, I've done like over 2,000 hours. So like,
That's
yeah.
amazing. Now, I know you said you were already an athlete in your early days, so you do have a bit of a head start compared to the average person. But even being an athlete and then getting into these different types of yoga trainings and practicing it for almost 10 plus years, how have you noticed your body change with doing yoga?
I notice it more if I don't practice. So say for a week, like something like I teach at the university, at McMaster University. So for a week that I have to teach I have to mark the finals, I pretty much didn't practice anything. And then after a week of practicing, I can see how my breath needs a little bit more time to be able to expand to its full capacity. I see that it's just a little bit harder for my body to go through the moves, and it's like any sort of a workout. If you don't do it for a while, your body starts to get lazy.
Correct.
So yeah, so that's how I notice it. If I don't practice yoga, and also it has an effect on the mood. If we had if you could see my face, my eye would start twitching after a while if I don't practice yoga. It's just like, oh my gosh, it's been a while. So it has a huge effect on the mental health as well as the physical health. So I would say it's a big deal. Yeah.
That's great to hear, because just like someone who does, strength conditioning workouts, say at the gym, when they stop going to the gym, I guess they lose, the feeling of those endorphins, and, they miss that working out, because it gives them that, that chemical boost in their mind, but as well as, the muscle boost. So same with yoga, you're sort of losing out on the pliability of, of the exercises, right? Because you stop doing them. So your body's a little bit more rigid, I guess.
Yeah, but you also see the difference on your breath, right? On your breath, on your focus, during the day, yeah.
So this is something that if people who are, say, in the business realm, athletes, maybe even school teachers, someone sitting at a 9 to 5 desk job, yoga is something that can drastically improve the capacity of their body, right? And their mind and their breath.
100%. Okay, so let's say you're sitting behind a desk. If you close your eyes, you imagine you're sitting behind a desk and your hands are on the keyboard. What does your shoulders look like? They're hunched over. What does your chest look like? It's caved in a little bit. And your spine usually, right? Usually after a while, this is because you're sitting for so long, your spine curves, and will obviously your hips they're in a flexion for a long period of time. So let's say we do a breath practice that you open the arms and lift the chest and the chin up with a breath. So that on its own would create space in and around your chest and your heart and your lungs. When there's more space, your lungs can expand. You can take in more volume of air, more volume of oxygen, and your body, your cells, they feed off of that oxygen. So your body will function better if you have a practice of breathing and moving and just having that, opening that chest.
Got it. So you're opening that channel. Yeah.
Right? As opposed to sitting behind a desk for a long period of time with your shoulders hunched over, your chest caved in.
You're closing the channel in by doing that.
Yeah. So you want to, when you practice yoga, when you practice any sort of movement, let's say functional movement, you help your posture to be better. When you help your posture to be better, you create that bit of space in front of your body, your chest. Therefore, there's more oxygen. Therefore, your body functions better, and your mood changes for a more uplifting mood. So
Which means you'll
everything,
think better.
and that makes your brain will function better. So you think better, 100%, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
people
I
might not.
recommend it.
Sorry, go ahead.
I recommend the movement. Like, our body has to move. It's not meant for a sedentary life, right? Our body has to move, and it's recommended that you move your body and get your heartbeat up 30 minutes every day.
Wow. And, you know, when you say this, I'm thinking because, you know, a lot of people are working from home now, and, you know, they're using their laptop as their primary device. Whereas, you know, if they went to work, they might have their desktop as their device. But with a laptop, like you're saying, it's on the table, the screen is part of it, and you are hunched over it, typing onto the keyboard, which is, you know, a little bit higher in terms of distance from the end of the laptop compared to a regular keyboard, which would be right there. So already you're in that hunch motion, and that screen is just drawing you in. And a lot of people might not be aware of this form that they're sitting at. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, and mostly if you like back in the day when we were in the offices, they have like this, they have programs for like ergonomic, you know, chairs and like desktops and things like that. But once you're at home, like you have your computer sometimes on your lap, you know,
Yeah.
and you're even like more hunched over. So it's that has definitely, our culture is being changed. So our bodies are being changed. It's going through a change. So we need to also, if workout, if yoga and things like that like is not part of our life, we need to start adding that. And most people want to, but most people choose convenience, and I don't want to use the word lazy, but the convenience is chosen to sit and Netflix, or, you know, on their free time.
Sure. After a long day of work, whether it's, you know, physical or mental, it's to the couch, right, with your favorite snack and Netflix. Yeah.
And especially now, because like if you want to work out, it'll be over the computer or over Zoom or whatever, right? Hopefully in the summertime we will get to the chance to do more outdoor activities. So I want to mention something. When I say, oh, you need to work out, I tell people you need to work out, you need to move, whatever. They tell me I go for walks. Okay, walks are great. However, that 30 minutes that I mentioned that you'd have to work out in today, so the 30 minutes is recommended. You know what? If you only have 10 minutes, work out 10 minutes, move 10 minutes. If you got like 15 minutes, work out, move 15 minutes. But your heartbeat has to increase for that period of time. Okay, so you need to have the higher heartbeat for that to be acceptable as that exercise that's good for your brain, that's good for your body. So the walking doesn't really get your heartbeat up unless you do a brisk walk or like a jog.
Okay, I see.
So
the walking.
If you're walking, add a bit of a faster walking or a jog to it if that's like your daily thing.
And how much faster should people get their heartbeats up from the regular heartbeat?
Oh, there's like a recommendation based on I don't remember exactly the recommendation what it is, but it's based on Heart and Stroke, American Heart and Stroke Foundation. So there's a specific recommendation.
Correct. So if anyone's going to
there's like a formula. There's a formula that has to do with your weight and height and all of that.
Got it. Yeah. And if anyone wants to do this, definitely check the heart and stroke metrics, but also, check with your
Yeah.
doctor for, heart conditions, things like that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I know,
Disclaimer.
disclaimer, that's important. And I also know that, people like Ben Greenfield, who's a biohacker with, athleticism and training, he actually has a heart rate variability monitor where he checks his nervous system and his heart rate at the start of the day before working out, because his philosophy is that every day is different. So if you're looking to play around with your heart rate, you have to know what your starting point is, because some days your heart is slow, some days it might be faster. Your capacity for working out changes every day. So he's actually doing a pre-measurement. So anyone out there who's a hacker in terms of working out, you can take this to the next level by measuring your pre-existing performance before starting the workout. That's available
And
there.
and nowadays everyone has those, like the wristbands or whatever that measures the heart rate. Everyone has one of those. So
Yeah.
it's been made easy to do.
Got it. Okay. So if I can ask you, because this has got me thinking, you're mentioning pliability is important, getting your cardio up there is important. So if I'm thinking of kids who are just, not fresh out of the womb, but, maybe ages 1 to 4, let's say, their natural state is not to sit on the couch and watch Netflix and eat snacks. I mean, their natural state is to crawl and bend into all sorts of positions. They're very pliable and they're
Yeah.
running and, they're full of energy. So why do you think it is that, we start out like this as kids, but then, as young adults into adults, we end up a little bit more sort of conservative with our energy and our physique?
Um, so our body's getting older, right? There's a theory that they say that until the age of 26, you basically have the vital energy of growing, not like you're invincible up until 26. After 26, everything is downfall. So basically everything you're doing, working out, practicing yoga, anything you're doing, you're trying to slow down the aging after the age of 26. So your vital energy, this is a theory that they say, right?
Sure.
So your vital energy is up to 26, and after that you're going downhill. But even if we look at the skeletal, our skeletal body, the very last bone in our body that fuses and we anatomically become an adult human is at the age of 24 when your collarbone fuses. So that's the last bone that fuses. So basically the structure of our body becomes more sturdy and we're not that limber and flexible anymore. So that's one thing. But also because we're growing, we have much more energy. Our stomach can intake different types of food and still be okay. But after a certain age, it's that energy level starts to deplete. So I think it's in Ayurveda, which is an ancient medical practice in India. I think it's in Ayurveda. So there is a thing called Jing, which is your energy source, and so there it's a finite source. So it's not an infinite. It's not. It has a limit, and basically every time you do something, you eat something that's not good for your body, you smoke, anything that's bad for the physical being of your body, you take away from your Jing, which is your energy force. So, and as adults, we do a lot of that. We drink, we smoke, we get into toxic relationships. So there's a lot of those things that take away from our energy source, and you know, that's why we don't have much energy like the kids do. And kids are much more innocent, so they don't get into toxic stuff until much later in life.
Sure, and then the awareness that things are toxic.
Yeah. So physically we're different, you know, psychologically we're different. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, so Jing is also, it's explained by the energy of water. So our body as humans, we're pretty much like over, I think, 80% water, and as we age, that percentage decreases. So that's another thing. Jing is associated with water and our energy force. So.
Got it. And I have read that, you know, in terms of the brain gets fully developed only when you're around, you know, I think it was 25 years old. So you're saying if, you know, the last skeletal structure is developed around 26 at that same point.
24, the last bone in our body fuses, and like our body becomes, like our skeletal body becomes fully fused.
Okay. So then we're sort of, you know, we complete at around that sort of age group, and then we hit peak performance, and then we're sort of just fighting against old age, right? Everything is to do is just to slow down.
Yeah. You know, our conversation, it kind of went towards workout and the physical health of the body from yoga, but one thing that I want to really mention that's the most important part of practicing yoga is breath. So breath, it's very, very important. If you just pause for a second here and take a really deep breath all the way down your belly and exhale out of your mouth. Doesn't that feel good?
It's like a sedative almost. Yeah. It's very calming.
And the thing is, just for today, when was the last time today that you paid attention to your breath like that?
Okay, so another disclaimer, just for me, and I might be, you know, one of the exceptions. Every morning in my morning shower, while the water's running, I spend 5 minutes just trying to listen to my breathing. So
amazing.
That's me priming myself. But I'm sure other people get lost into the, you know, routines of life and the patterns, right? That you forget about your breath, like you're saying.
Yeah. So every time, if I'm driving and if I'm like driving around and whatever, like every time I'm behind a red light, I just like, I try to focus on my breath. So you could pick different parts of the day, something that you do all the time, and you can couple it with this habit of becoming conscious, becoming mindful of your breath. So the word mindful is something that pretty much associates with yoga, and it's been thrown around a lot. It's on the cover of the magazines, everything like that, right? So mindfulness is basically becoming aware. The first tool of mindfulness, the tool in our toolbox, the first thing is breath.
Got it. And that builds the awareness, right? Once you have that.
Yeah. So that cultivates more awareness of your body, more aware. So you become, once you start to hear yourself breathe, and once you start to notice sensations in your body. So just with your breath, you can feel the rise and fall of your chest, of your belly, of the shoulders if you're seated. With your breath, you can feel the touch of air below your nostrils. Like you bring your awareness more and more. You fine-tune your awareness more and more and more to your breath. So you sharpen your awareness with the use of the breath. And that would lead to a place that you can understand the language of your body, the language your body speaks to you with. So like if there is an ache, if there is a pain, so let's say you're in a yoga pose, let's say you're like in a stretchy yoga pose, And if you stay in that stretch and you start to breathe deeply, that stretch changes. And say you're doing it on one side and then you do it on the other side. On that, like on the left side, you feel different. So now you're like learning to listen to the sensations in your body, which is the language your body speaks to you with. So once you start to listen and learn this language, then it becomes the window of you understanding what your body is saying. The window gets shorter, it gets smaller. So your body doesn't have to yell at you for you to, look after it.
Correct, which is pain, right? So before you get the pain, you can catch it in advance.
Yeah, so you feel out the sensations, right? So pain is another signal that's telling your body's telling you, hey, something's going on there. You got to pay attention, But once you become more aware and more with the use of the breath, your attention gets sharpened to your body, so you can pick up signals that your body is sending you. Like next time you eat something that doesn't go with your stomach, but then the next time you see it, if you pay so close of an attention, you feel that your stomach gets that type of feeling before you eat that food. So it signals you.
Wow.
But
so
you
really
have to
slowing
be
things down.
So you basically have to be so aware of it, and be mindful of it, and know the language of your body to be like, okay, I listen. I don't eat that food,
Wow. So yoga really is like, I guess, in a way, the meditation of the body.
So there's a part of yoga we say taking yoga off of your mat. Okay. So when you practice yoga, you're practicing on your mat. But then when you take it off of your mat, that means you practice it in your everyday life. Let's say you're standing and you're washing dishes. Let's say you're standing and you're brushing your teeth. Okay. So the way that you're standing, you start to, after doing yoga for so long or doing any sort of like functional movement, you start to understand, oh, when I was stretching the other day on the left side, the stretch felt different than the right side. Is it because I'm standing in a weird way? I'm sending my hip to the left when I stand and wash dishes. Is it because of that? So maybe I should stand properly and have my hips aligned. Or like if I'm bending over, bend my knees and keep my back flat when I'm bending over. That way I'm not injuring my low spine. And there's a lot of people that have injury in their spine because the way that they're bending and picking up heavy stuff, they use their back instead of using their legs. So practice of yoga makes you aware of how to use your muscles in a functional way, so you don't injure yourself while you're, walking, while you're standing, while you're sitting, things that are repetitive.
Got it. It's like when they say when you bend down, don't bend from your back, just sort of, angling over. You have to bend at the knees. So you're being very sensible about thinking about how you're using your body.
So yes, they tell you this, right? But the thing is, you keep doing it. But once you actually practice that movement in your body automatically will go to a place the next time you bend over. You're not going to bend your spine. You're going to bend from your hips and your knees. Yeah. It becomes like, it picks it up. It becomes automatic in your body, Otherwise, like someone sees you as like, oh, bend your legs when you pick up bend your knees when you pick up something heavy. But usually if the practice of movement is not in your body, you automatically will go to that easy way of picking it up and injure yourself.
Got it. No, that's amazing. You've given us a lot to think about, especially me. I've always been someone who's put yoga on the back burner. But after listening to you, you've touched on different things, not only the technique, but the body aspect, the mind aspect, the breath. Yoga to me is everything. It's everything you do, say, feel, think. So I want to thank you once again for coming on the podcast and sharing your experience. And if people want to get a hold of you to learn more about your teachings, how can they find you?
Well, thanks for having me here. Yes, of course. So I have a website. It's called proyogalive.com. And also my Instagram is the same, pro.yoga.live, pro yoga live. That's my handle.
Okay, amazing. And I'll put these in the show notes as well so people can have the link directly to your social media.
Amazing. Thank you.
No, it was a pleasure. And once again, thanks again, Dory, and I wish you all the best.
I find this is a privilege to talk about yoga. So I thank you, and it's an honor to spread this ancient wisdom and this love with everyone and your listeners. So thank you again.
My pleasure. Thanks.